backyard. This is a series that we present the second Wednesday of the month, a Zoom series. We celebrate native plants, native diversity, and what you and I can do in our own backyard to encourage that diversity and utilizing native plants. So it's an exciting thing. And these are exciting times because Nature in My Backyard, which is the sponsor of this Zoomcast, is actually in the progress of migrating. We were founded under the auspices of the Audubon Society of Greater Cleveland and the Shaker Lakes Garden Club and the Master Gardeners of Greater Cleveland, or Cuyahoga County. But it turns out a wonderful opportunity has emerged, and we will be moving over to Ohio Native Plants, which is the brand new brand for what was formerly called the Ohio Native Plant Month. And this is exciting because this is a wonderful website and organization that was successful in getting April designated as Native Plant Month in Ohio permanently, and strives to get the educational message out to folks, to individuals, to us, regular gardeners, but also to nurseries and other places to celebrate native plants, for nurseries to actually carry, and garden centers to carry native plants, so that we can advance this cause of conservation in our backyard. And so we're really excited to bring the two together, the Audubon Society of Greater Cleveland and the Master Gardeners of Cuyahoga County and Shaker Lakes Garden Club, which were the founding sponsors of Nature in My Backyard, moved to be the presenting sponsors, but Nature in My Backyard will move under the new auspices. So anyway, a lot more information about that. Check out the new website, ohionativeplants.org. It's just really exciting. And another exciting new feature is a feature called Ask a Robin. This is conversations with our own Robin Shashit, who is a landscape designer, horticulturist, and native plant enthusiast, and she'll answer your questions. And we are doing these on Wednesdays when we're not doing this particular feature. So check out the website for more information on that. The idea that you would submit questions, and then you'd log on to a Zoom, and then you have Q&A to figure out what's going on. So really neat stuff happening here. And of course, next month, we'll be back here on the second Wednesday for Brown Bagging It From My Backyard. And we'll welcome Matt Schumer. And he's the program coordinator of the Ohio Bird Conservation Initiative, based at the School of Environment and Natural Resources at The Ohio State University, which happens to be Debra's alma mater. He's also the current president of the Association of Field Ornithologists. He's going to be talking about Every Yard Counts, backyard contributions to bird conservation. So you don't want to miss that. Okay, today we are really, really happy that our guest is Debra Knapke. Did I get it right?
You got it.
All right. Who is a nationally known and renowned horticulturist, educator, garden designer, and best known as the garden sage. I talked to Debra the other day. I was really, really pleased to find that she hails originally from Lake County, born and raised in Willowick, where she had formative experiences exploring the Chagrin River, Lake Erie, and the forest's nearby habitats. And she credits a lot of those experiences for instilling in her a wonder and passion for the natural world that has informed and inspired her all her life. She is a proud graduate of Willoughby South High School, go Rebels. And as I said before, later the Ohio State University. Her vocal talents led to thoughts of the opera, but instead led to a career in speech and language pathology. But then in 1992, she had an epiphany. She turned her lifelong avocation and passion for gardening, for plant study, into a full-time career. And she secured a master's degree in horticulture. And then she taught horticulture and landscape design from 1995 to 2019 at Columbus State Community College, inspiring the next generation of horticulturists and landscape designers. And Through her teaching and programs and writing, she became known as the garden sage. It's interesting. She said that that line was actually suggested by her husband. There was some debate about the sage being just the herb or referring to a wise one, but we're going with the wise one. But it's a great way of combining her passions. She has co-authored a series of very popular books from Lone Pine Press, um, Annuals for Ohio, Perennials for Ohio, Gardening Month by Month in Ohio, Best Garden Plants for Ohio, and also Herb Gardening for the Midwest. She talks about on her blog post her passions, and her passions include serving, and she's served on so many different boards. But she mentions a couple things. Um, she had two-term as the honorary president of the Herb Society of America and is the co-chair of the Sustainability Committee of GardenCom. She's on the board of trustees of a local cemetery association and trying to bring the gospel of native plants to cemeteries. So she believes strongly in that. She believes strongly in teaching and speaking and writing. She believes strongly in is passionate about coaching, garden coaching, and design. Um, Most weekends these days, you could find her at Groovy Plants Ranch, which is in Marengo, Ohio, and it's founded by Jared Hughes and his wife. And Jared was one of Debra's former students at Columbus State Community College. So anyway, and she also beams with pride about her grandkids who are developing the same passion for gardening and nature as she. Um, Debra encourages sustainability in all that she does, as well as respect for the natural world. And she reminds us that all gardens are about water and soil and preaches soil health. She used the line, to be a steward of the soil is to be a steward of the earth. I love that. So before I cue it up and give it to Debra, just a reminder, mute your microphones, turn off your video. Any questions you have, post them in the chat. We'll get them to the end here. So speaking about using native plants on our home grounds, it's my privilege and pleasure to introduce Debra Knapke. Debra, take it away.
Thank you, Harvey. Well, I'm going to share my presentation in just a moment, and I do want to second Harvey's advice to please turn off your video. It is very distracting to people who are looking at the presentation. And if you don't know how to do that, you have to go to the bottom left corner of, for most people, of your monitor, and you'll see the little audio microphone. And if you click on that, it shows where you can, your audio and also video next to it where you can turn it off. Thank you so much. So I am going to share my presentation. Up we go. There we go. All right. So, and I am also going to get rid of, there we go. Great. Welcome. This talk is one that I started developing almost 10 years ago, using native plants on our home grounds. And part of the inspiration, I've been growing native plants for a very long time. I'm also an herb and food grower. So my 2/3 of a garden, 2/3 of an acre garden is filled with ornamentals, trees, shrubs, food, herbs, flowers, you name it, and structures that we have built over the years. And you're looking at a picture of a part of our backyard, and I will talk more about it later, but just to give you a feel for what part of the yard looks like and how there are quite a number of native plants there. And again, I'll mention that more later. So our gardens, our home places, what does that mean? Where is it that we feel comfortable? And if you could just take a moment and think about where is that place that you go that you feel like your home? Is it your garden? Is it another place? You know, for the longest time, I was very active at Inniswood Metro Gardens for about 12, almost 15 years. And that was an important place for me. And it was a home place, a home garden, if you will. So a garden can be defined as a place or a space based on an idea or a theme, and it is where something happens. There's action, there's life, there's change, there's creation, there's destruction. And that is all built on top of an ecology, built on top of um, water, soil, land. So when we talk about our home grounds, we need to understand what our home grounds sit on. So I know that there are many of you from the Cleveland area, and you can see there's the Portage Escarpment, and that's where I grew up a good part of my life. And it sounds like Harvey did too, and Kirtland, or very close to it. But I'm down in Franklin County, and we're in the Till Plains, and it's pretty flat. And when I moved down here for college, I was astonished that there was hardly any topography compared to what's up in the northeast corner of Ohio. And that was one of my first lessons, besides all of my lessons of my youth being on the Chagrin River and Lake Erie and the forests around. But it was my first lesson of, wow, Ohio is different in different places. And you can see by this map on the right side that these are the 5 physiographic regions of Ohio. Those are the dark black borders. And then within each of those parts, there are smaller parts. And we call that like this is a level 4 ecological map, but then we can go into level 5 and level 6, and we get into smaller and smaller spaces as we define how these physiographic regions are. And we define them based on the geology, the stone, the rock they're built on, the landform or topography, elevation change. What are the plants and the animals that live in this area? And what is the evolutionary history? What happened in these places? You can see up in the northwest corner of Ohio, that big blue area is the old black swamp that was totally covered by an inland lake or swamp and has some of the most fertile soils that we have in Ohio. And just for grins, I put the map, the level 3 map of the United States, and you can see how much change there is from East Coast to West Coast, from Minnesota down to Texas and Florida. I tend to concentrate on the natural vegetation of Ohio or wherever I may be. We travel a lot, and the first thing I do is figure out what grows there. That gives me so much information. But back to Ohio, this map was, I think, in the 1800s, at the time of the earliest land surveys, and these were the major vegetation types. And as you look at this map, and you can see on the left side, I made it bigger so you could see it. It's kind of small on the actual map. These are the vegetation types, and they are mostly forests. Approximately 90% of Ohio was forested when Europeans came on the scene. But even before then, Ohio was managed by native populations, native tribes of people who came in and out. And Ohio was known for its richness of game and its richness of water and land resources. But as you look at this, you can see from oak savannas on up, and then including the bottomland hardwood forests at the bottom, those are our forests of Ohio. So you can see how much of it was covered by trees. This was also mentioned, I think, by Hope in her talk in January. And I cannot go further. Harvey mentioned my passion for soil, Mother Earth, our foundation. Without soil, the rest doesn't happen. So, most of you are probably familiar with the soil profile, our topsoil on top, and then our different horizons that get all the way down to hard bedrock. And that bedrock determines the pH of our soil, whether it will be clays, sand, silt. And as you look at that diagram, you can see that half of soil is soil solids, with most of them being sand, silt, and clay. And as you look at the green part that's in there, that's organic material, dead leaves, dead animals, that is recycled and makes sand, silt, and clay come alive. So then you look at the other half, and the other half of soil is water and air. The macro and micro pores that go through soil that create the structure of our soil are filled with water and air, very necessary. Now, in that organic matter, this is an interesting set of statistics, but I want you to hold your hands together, cup them together, and imagine a cup of healthy forest soil. And in there, you have 60 miles of fungal hyphae. Every once in a while, the hyphae is aggregated enough that we can see it as white threads, but other times it's microscopic and we cannot see it. And then the other arthropods, nematodes, protozoa, bacteria, all of that in a cup of healthy plant soil. And that's what makes roots grow. And in most plant systems, there is more plant or biomass underground than above ground. We only see a portion of our plants above ground. The rest, one could say, is hiding. So, one of my favorite quotes, and one that should guide you as you delve into the mysteries of the plants and animals and bacteria and fungi of our earth. Our greatest problems result from the difference between how people think and how nature works. So I draw your attention to this picture, and what this tree is struggling to do is to survive. Normally, its roots would be spread out over land, but instead they've become a knotted mess, and in some cases even have come up above the soil in an effort to survive and to hold this tree into the ground. We do this to our street trees, and every time I see this, a little part of me says, "Oh, I feel so bad for this tree." And it is a statistic that most of our trees only last 10 to 12 years because of these restricted root zones, and of also sometimes people not being kind to our trees and vandalizing them. A corollary to this about nature is a bumper sticker that I have on the back of my car that says, "Nature bats last." And I will let you think about that. So, some other quotes. I love quotes. I read a lot, and there is so many beautiful quotes and pieces of information from authors of all walks of life when it comes to the garden and the natural world. And this is by Oliver Sacks. Nature calls to something very deep in us. Biophilia, the love of nature and living things, is an essential part of the human condition. Hortophilia, the desire to interact with, manage, and tend nature, is also deeply instilled in us. So as you look at this prairie, this is Bigelow Prairie in Irwin, Ohio. It is a prairie remnant that was saved because of a family cemetery being put in part of a farm field. So I get my inspiration from the Bigelow Prairie and other places like that in Ohio and beyond. But since most of you are probably from Ohio who are watching this, these are some places that taught me deep and long lasting lessons that I've carried into my garden. So Hocking Hills, the Stones, the Appalachian part of our state, and Battelle Darby Metro Park, which is on the west side of Columbus, which is a wetland prairie that was turned into farm and then put back into wetland prairie by the Metro Park system, John Watts and his crew. Then there's Cedar Bog in Urbana, Ohio, another very wet place. Even though it is called a bog, it is a fen, fed with waters from underground. And please take a look at the Cedar Bog site because this bog is now being threatened by a data center that is being proposed to be built a mile or two north of it, which would interfere with the aquifer that feeds this bog. If this is something that is important to you, I hope you will add your name to the petition. And then the Oak Openings, Savannah, up in Northwest Ohio, where in some places the sands can be 16 feet deep, and yet plants still grow on something that many of us would say, well, there's no dirt in there, there's no soil. And you're looking at cranberries because this is very, very acidic soil. And that is a black oak, which is actually quite old, but the rings are very, very narrow because very low nutrition soil, so it grows very slowly. All these lessons in here showing me how plants and animals adapt to ecosystems, and that when I create a garden, I am creating an ecosystem, and I am seeing if what I put into that ecosystem will adapt to my conditions or will run away. And then there's that lesson there. These are some of our partners. We have so many partners. Many of these are in my yard, or I've taken them in neighbor's yard or in the Heritage Garden. Like the toad that decided my my African oh gosh, the Zephyranthes. I think of botanical names before I think of common names. My rain lilies, they need to be moist, and the toad thought that was a perfect place to be. And catty corner to that is the egg case of the Carolina mantis on one of my spruces in my yard, and dragonflies and bumblebees, and of course the locusts, the cicadas. And then in my backyard, there was a male turtle looking for his lady love. I do want to point out that another lesson that I never knew was that butterflies have a long proboscis and they need minerals to do what they do so that they can make eggs and their generations can go on. And that is a buckeye butterfly on. Can you tell what it is? It is a feces of something. So as you look at that, um, many things feed our animals, many partners. And of course, our pollinators. That is the buzzword for gardens today, feeding our pollinators. And I want you to think about something. All of our gardens are pollinator gardens in some way. The important thing is that our gardens be biodiverse so that they feed many pollinators, not just a few, but many, as you can see them here. And these are not all my pictures. Some of them I took off of iNaturalist and Extension and National Park Service, etc. And some of these are in my yard, like the monarch on those deep red zinnias, which I had for about 10 years, and then they disappeared. Self-seeding, and 1 year something changed. And that is something we can depend on in the garden, is change. So another strong, very strong um, influence on my own garden was the Ohio Governor's Residence and Heritage Garden, which I started working in 2004 with Hope Taft. And there are many aspects to it, and our newest garden is the pollinator garden that you can see a line going to it. And that is now maturing. Last year was its first year. but I'm going to take you to some of the spaces of this garden and talk about the lessons that influenced me for creating my home ground, but how this is the home grounds of Ohio. Hope Taft had a vision as she traveled around the state. She thought, why is the residence just grass and trees? Why can't we represent the 5 physiographic regions of Ohio? And that's what she set out to do with many partners. And this is what we have now. So this is, let's see, this would be late May, early June in the Allegheny Plateau border, which I showed you earlier with the fall picture. And again, I mentioned that what is a given in a garden and any natural ecosystem is change. So this garden has plants of the Allegheny Plateau border, which is up in the north east part of the state and comes on down, echoing some of the Appalachian Plateau. And this garden taught me a lot about what will adapt and what will overgrow when you put in too much compost. It is a good lesson. What you are seeing that looks like grass in the front is one of our native bulbs. And I encourage you to take a look at Camassia. Um, let's see, I'm trying to think of its common name is also Camassia, and I uncharacteristically did not put that plant name there, but take a look at it. Camassia, Camassia. In the woodland garden, we have a mix. We have a mix of native plants and a few non-native plants. You can see the hellebores in bloom. In fact, this picture comes from this time of year with the hellebores in bloom and the yellow celandine poppies and the Decameria barbara or wood vamp that you can see off to the right. So many of you may be growing the climbing hydrangea. I have it in my garden, but we also have, and this is also called a hydrangea or the native hydrangea, the Decumaria or wood vamp. Beautiful, beautiful plant. It too will climb up a tree or a wall. So if you are trying to have more natives in your garden, take a look at this climber. My I, my climbing hydrangea is covered with pollinators when it's in bloom. So the generalist species do very well with it, but there may be some specialist species that need the wood vamp. So I'd like to talk about non-native plants just briefly. The residence is not all native, but I wish I knew the percentage, but I'm going to guess around 60 to 70% of the plants at the governor's residence is native, but we also have quite a large agricultural garden, which I'll get to. But we also have an annual border because don't we all love color? And this border is made up of begonias and caladiums and impatiens and a legacy plant. So as you look at behind all this beautiful color, you can see the peonies. And those are plants that have been on the property for years. And the reason I use the term legacy plants is that they are plants that are beloved by someone, and even if they're not native, we still are going to grow them. When I was at Mount Cuba in the state of Delaware, I asked them, why why do you have so many daffodils and plants that are not native? Because you are known for native plant native plant research and also native plant introduction and really carrying home the message that native plants are necessary to support our native animals. And the reply, I really loved it. The reply was, this was a beloved plant of Mrs. Copeland. How could we not have it on her property? So these peonies were beloved plants of the many people who have lived in the governor's residence. First, it was the Jeffrey Mansion, and then it became the governor's residence. We have a rose garden of roses with roses that are not native. And we also have native roses so that we can show both. But those are legacy plants, plants beloved by those who have lived here on these home grounds. So we have ponds and wetlands. And that is one thing. I do have water in my garden because of a stream behind me that is not mine, but I borrow it. And to me, I love water gardens, and I'm glad some folks do them. But to me, a water garden means that I'm going to have more maintenance. It is a higher maintenance type of garden. But we have pickerel weed and lizard's tail and the fragrant water lily that is, oh, such a magical smell, and cattails and our native iris. Also, in the lower left corner, you can see one of our animal partners, the northern leopard frog. So just a quick discussion about cattails. Our native cattail in white off to the left. If you look at it, you can see that the male part of the flower, that is the skinny part, is connected to the female part, that is the fat part, as some people call the hot dog part. The leaves are very broad and no space between male and female parts of the flower. As you look to the right, this is the non-native or the narrow-leafed cattail. Um, and they look the same, but this is a close-up. So take my word for it. This is the narrow-leafed. You'll notice that there's a huge space between the female part of the flower, which is on the bottom, and the male part of the flower, which is on the top. Big space. And then I don't have a picture of the hybrid that has happened between them, but the hybrid Typha X glauca has mid-width leaves and small varying spaces between the female flower and the male flower. But just a little bit of a botanical lesson here and what you're looking for if you want the native cattail. So here is a border that again combines native and non-native plants. This is the First Lady's Terrace designed by Nadia Malarkey, who lives in Yellow Springs. And I'm showing you two seasons. The larger picture is the spring into summer season. And the smaller picture is the non-native calamentha. It smells heavenly, with the native Sporobolus heterolepis or prairie dropseed. As you look at these two, and this is happening right in the middle of the border, you can see that it changes. And I'll say it probably another couple times in this talk. Change happens. It is inevitable. And working at Groovy Plants Ranch, I'll get people who say, I want color in my garden at the whole season, and I want lots of flowers, and I want it to be just right. And I only want to spend 1 hour in it a month. And we all know, gardeners, you're probably chuckling, that it isn't quite that way, but we can get beautiful gardens if we choose the plants well and put a little bit of, well, a lot of time in the first couple of years. And then our maintenance will drop off as the gardens become more established. One of my favorite places, I say that about a lot of places in the Heritage Garden, but the Oak Opening Sand Dune. These are the acidic sands of Northwest Ohio, and our our sand dune is quite full of plants. Many times you will not see it quite that much, but some of these plants have sent their roots down into the very rich clay soil underneath, and so they're getting more nutrition than they usually would in the sands. But you can see the butterfly weed on the left, and also with the horsetail. And on the right, you can see one of my favorite plants that I cannot grow, that was a lesson learned, is our native lupin, the lupin, Lupinus perennis. And I was also recently in Alaska, and the Alaskan lupin, Nucatensis, up there. It's everywhere on the roadsides, but I'm sure I wouldn't be able to grow it because my soil's not right. But here they are growing on this very sandy soil with low nutrition, but definitely acidic. Have I tried to do this at my house? Yes, I have. Have I failed? Yes, I have. And then we have special plants, very special plants. We have the lakeside daisy that has a very restricted location, and you're seeing it grow in the Heritage Garden on the Alvar. These are rocks that were brought from Kelly's Island to be in the Heritage Garden and along with the gravel. So we actually transplanted a piece of the Alvar that you would find in on Kelly's Island, on the edge of Lake Erie. If you've ever been to Lakeside, they have Alvar there. And this is, again, very poor, low nutrition soil, gravel, definitely gravel with just a little bit of soil in there as the gravel breaks down. The Lakeside daisy is, we are so proud that it has decided to grow in the Heritage Garden because this is a plant that I probably would not be able to grow in my garden. And next to it is the beautiful white lady slipper, excuse me, the Cypripedium candidum. And I want you to see that as only 6 inches tall. So it is growing in the sedge meadow. It needs consistently moist soil. Have I tried to grow this? No, I have not, because I don't want something this beautiful to not make it in my garden because I don't have the right place. And these are both endangered plants. So if you see them in the wild, please enjoy them, appreciate them, take and take only pictures with you home. Don't cut the flower. Don't try to dig up the plant because they have such special habitats that they belong in that unless you are magical and your garden is magical, they will not live for you. And then we have the cedar glade, which is down, in, let's see, Cedar Glade is in Adams County, down by the Ohio River. We started calling it the Cedar Barrens, but because the soil was so rich, even though we brought soil up from Adams County, these plants have decided to be exuberant and grow. But we have the white false indigo. Many of you are probably familiar with the blue false indigo, and here's the white, which I have in my garden, but it's a small plant. Wing stem, rattlesnake master, which is just coming up. I don't know if you can see my pointer, but in the center of the picture, and it has the most wonderful button flowers that are so different from just about everything else in the garden. And of course, the ever present butterfly weed and so many more plants. So many of these plants are adaptable and they're not restricted only to the Cedar Barrens, but this is where they originally were from. And we find that many of our plants can adapt to other places. Unlike the white lady slipper or the lakeside daisy, the white false indigo, where it loves the cedar barrens, will also grow in my yard, although I need to use compost to break up the clay because sometimes clay can suffocate the roots of plants because it is so dense. The prairie. The prairie is glorious in June, July, and August with royal catchfly and purple coneflower and bee balm and black-eyed Susans and a variety of grasses. And you can see the back of the residence behind the garden. But this garden is so joyful in the summer, and many of these plants easily come into our gardens. And I also want to mention a few things about deer. We do not have deer in the Heritage Garden that I know of, but I imagine many of you do, and you will find that some of these plants are the favorite plants of deer, like the royal catchfly. For years, they didn't bother it in my garden. It does have some poisonous chemicals in its leaves, etc., but unfortunately not enough because the deer have discovered them. So I have to protect them with sometimes with other plants and with sprays and a prayer, sometimes and a prayer. But it is these beautiful royal catchflies in the middle that bring hummingbirds to the garden. And that is another joy. And just to show you what prairie plants do, they go deep. And remember, I said that there's more biomass underground than there is above ground? Take a look. Go 4 over from the end, and you can see the Indian grass. We now call it yellow grass. And look at the masses of roots that grow there and that shed every year and add to the organic matter of soil. And that is why the farmlands were so rich in Nebraska and Iowa and Kansas, because there were years and years of accumulation of organic matter in that soil, and the farms were so rich themselves. I do want to point out this one little plant all the way to the left. Those are our lawns, our lawn grass. That is Kentucky bluegrass. Please notice that the roots go about 2 to 3 inches into the soil, which means during a drought, this plant goes dormant so that it can survive. Or we water it a lot and use water to keep it alive. Wouldn't it be better maybe to put in some low prairie plants or clover or other plants that not only go deeply and add to the soil, but also feed our pollinators and our other animals in our gardens? So, our agricultural history. We have a rich agricultural and horticultural history in Ohio. And Fran DeWine, First Lady DeWine, wanted Mr. McGregor's garden. And so we have a beautiful garden. And if you visit, you will also see um, the Peter Rabbit pathway through the garden. And behind this, you can't see it. I forgot to put that picture in, our agricultural garden that shows corn and wheat and oats and tomatoes and whatever is grown in Ohio and has been developed in Ohio. Livingston seeds and the Livingston tomato. We have such a history of agriculture and horticulture. So this part of the garden lets us have joy in that part of Ohio too, our native plants and our rich history. Another favorite place of mine, notice I did say I would say that many times, is the cranberry bog and herb garden. I love herbs, and this garden is very special. It is made up of sand and sphagnum moss. That is it. It is acidic sand, and you're looking at cranberries in bloom, and you're looking at the bog orchid, the little pink flower in the middle, and um, the pitcher plant, which is in bloom and also in leaf, the carnivorous plant that says, "Come hither to insects," and then does them in. So I really wanted one of these, and I thought, how could I have a bog in my yard? So I bought on the left, it is a 30-inch shallow container, double walled plastic container from Crescent Gardens. And I filled it with a neutral sand, silica sand, because I did not have acidic sand. And I was given some sphagnum moss from a private property and some cranberries. So close up on the right, this is actually from the bog at the Heritage Garden, but my bog also has that mix of cranberries and sphagnum moss. And my other bog, which you cannot see, it's on the other side, has the Sarracenia or the pitcher plant in it. But I can only water it with rainwater or distilled water. If I water it with my groundwater, which has a very high pH, it will fail. It will die. It must have low pH water and low pH substrate. So just a couple more pictures here. This is, sometimes we do different things with our native plants. And because of my work with native plants in the Heritage Garden, I thought that these prairie plants would also be perfect for the scattering garden at Flint Cemetery. I am a cemetery trustee and the chairperson of the advisory committee for the Flint and Walnut Grove cemeteries. And when we decided to create a scattering garden, I said, I think I have the perfect plants for that. And I used the prairie as my inspiration for creating a final home ground for people who wanted a different choice for burial. So I'm going to also mention the new website for Ohio Native Plants, where you will see all of the resources that were on the Ohio Native Plant Month website, plus so many more. And also, one other thing that will be on that website will be a video that we created at the Heritage Garden that talks about the new pollinator garden and some of the plants there. And you will see, again, the inspiration that came from the prairie and the other parts of the Heritage Garden that that inspired the redo of a garden that needed a little help. So new website, ohionativeplants.org. And my last slide. Remember I told you I would come back to talking about my home ground, and this is just a small portion of it. And on the right, I have listed all the native plants that are here. And every single one of those plants have taught me something about what it is to have a home ground. Um, I have had many failures. I have probably killed more plants than most people. Not necessarily proud of that, but it was the process of learning what I could do and what the nature gods would allow me to do. And I have tried so that I can tell you what not to do. But I know that some of you push the envelope too, and that is what it is to be human and to create your own garden, your own home ground. So as you look at some of those plants, know that this is a garden from 2012, and this garden has changed since then. It has become wilder. That grass that you see in the front, oh, it's gone. And it's now filled with plants. And I need to take another picture and do a before and after. And there are even more native plants in here that I've been putting into little pockets here and there as I redo areas that just don't seem right anymore. So I invite you to look at your garden, your home grounds, look at what works, look at what maybe isn't working for you, maybe do some changing. And it's not so much that you are maintaining a garden, but that you are creating a place that makes you feel like you are home. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so very much, Deborah. What a fabulous program. With the music of your voice, as well as the importance of your message, I think you've inspired each and every one of us. Um, I'm going to hit what questions are in the chat. We'll go through those. We're already getting plaudits.
Thank you. Thank you all for listening.
And one person, I think we got this answered in the chat. They were asking, can we visit and tour the Ohio Governor's residence and Heritage Garden? And I believe the answer is yes. And I think Wendy posted the website. It's in the chat. So if you go there.
And let me expound on that just a little bit so you know
Okay.
what to expect. The tours are only on Wednesdays. That is also the time that the volunteers are in the garden, so you'll see us at work. And the tours, you can get a house tour, you can get a garden tour, you can get a mixed house and garden tour. So you need to specify which you want. They are usually about 45 minutes to an hour in length. And I believe they start at either 9:30 or 10 o'clock, depending on what is happening in the garden that day. And there may be multiple ones going on at the same time. Usually we try not to do that. So one might be at 9:30, another one at 11 or 11:30, and then a final one at 9 or 2. And that changes from year to year. So what happened last year may not necessarily happen this year. But during the tour, we also have some of our experts. So when you're at the Alvar, you may be talking to Diana Morse, or when you're at the Prairie, you may be talking to Susan Moore, or the Oak Openings, Mary McNunn, or you may talk to our two garden managers, Lisa Reiser and Karen Rissmiller. We have so many people who are intimately involved with their places in the garden. And if you were to ask them and say, what is your favorite place? They would say, well, it's the one I'm working in, but I also love the other parts of the garden.
Do you get a sense of how much the first families use the garden? I mean, it's a wonderful thing to have a show place. It's wonderful that it's open to folks who come there. But I was wondering, how often do they have a reception for dignitaries, for legislative leaders, where they point out the
Hmm.
unique aspects of the garden and how representative it is of the state?
Actually, a lot. The DeWines use the garden a lot, and that's why the tours are only on Wednesday because there
Cool.
are functions in the house and garden continually. Um, there have been where they set up tables, etc., in the front, and people then tour in the back. I have been a garden guide from time to time when there are people there to see the garden. We have had very large tours given to not Ohio, the Garden Clubs of America and Garden Clubs of Ohio, big tours. But the DeWines entertain a lot and use it. The Kasichs also entertained and used it, as did the Stricklands and the Tafts. Those are the four administrations I have gone through. So, um, but they all used it, they all appreciated it. And as you can imagine, there were times when um, there was more activity and less. So it is counted as an asset to the governor's residence, the garden.
Fabulous.
And as far as we know, we are the only governor's residence that has representation of the natural areas of our state, which is, I think, pretty cool.
It's such a brilliant concept, and the images you showed, it's so well executed. That's fabulous. Okay, we have a question. What do you think about buying clover seed to fill in and hopefully replace grass?
Yes, that's a
Oh, that
simple
was
one.
an easy
In
one.
fact, I I will be scattering some more seed. I had some areas that have gotten a little bit more shady. They don't get as much sun, so I have some clover that I'm going to put out. Plus, I am also seeding out some of our little Prunella vulgaris. I'll think of it in a minute what the common name is. If anybody out there um, has it, but it will take the shade. And I let other plants creep into my lawn because my kids aren't here anymore, and uh, it's okay if some of my shade plants decide that they'd rather be lawn plants instead of the garden. But clover is great, especially if it gets a little bit more sun. Um, so um, anyway, so back to clover. I'm sorry, I started going off and started thinking of all
That's
these
okay.
plants from my garden that are creeping out. But definitely clover is great because it also puts nitrogen into the soil. And if you're fertilizing your lawn, once you get clover in, you won't need to do that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that if you've got clover, it means you're not using all those noxious lawn chemicals that, get rid of the so-called weeds. Yeah, that's a great idea.
There is
Okay.
that. Oh,
Um,
thank you for
Mel,
someone putting in Camassia psaloides into the chat. Thank you, Robin.
yeah, I
I
think
just
Robin did
thought
that.
I should look at the chat.
Melanie asked the question, would a bog function as a rain garden? Hmm.
Uh, it could, but you would have to do a lot to change our soil to make a bog garden. It would be better because rain gardens also sometimes dry out in the middle of the summer. So plants that we would call bog plants, you would have to water them then in your rain garden in the middle of the summer. So it could function as a rain garden, but it's not its best use. A bog garden would be better if you have a wet site in your yard that you don't know what to do with. So test it and see what the pH is because bog would be for acidic and fen would be for alkaline. And those are two different sets of plants that you would need to look at. So if you have a wet area that stays consistently moist during the whole growing season, yes, that's what I would expect a bog or fen to be.
And a water garden that is, let's say, taking runoff from your gutters
Hmm.
and the like. I'm trying to think of how neutral rainwater is. Is it? It's slightly
It is
basic, isn't it?
neutral.
It
It's
is neutral.
neutral.
Okay.
But that also, coming off your roof, it also takes off
Yeah.
oils and pollution and other
Yeah.
things. So you need plants that will be able to tolerate that. I
Yeah.
will say some of our bog and fen plants are not pollution tolerant. I tried to say both words at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, they do not tolerate pollution, which, and I'm going to go back to cedar bog, if they use those aquifer waters and then return them to the aquifer, that will change those waters.
Hmm.
So just something to put in
Wow.
there.
And Melanie also asked, are you able to keep rabbits and deer from eating your trillium? I really want to plant some in my yard. Hmm.
Okay, so you need to go to the store and get a product called Plant Skid, PLANTSKYDD, Plant Skid. It is there's a liquid and a granular. You want the granular that you put on the edge, and there's a formulation for rabbits. It is made with blood, and so it is a deterrent because they smell death, essentially, is what they're smelling, to put it quite bluntly. You may, from time to time, have to exclude. You can also exclude with a low fence, a fence that would be about 8 to 10 inches tall to keep the rabbits out. But I will tell you, deer go right over that fence. And for deer, you might have to do a plant skid solution and also from time to time spray with a specific deer product that you will switch up because deer get used to different products. And for the plant skid, if you use the liquid formulation, you would want to apply that before the flowers come on because if there's blood in it, that will change the color of the flowers and the leaves. But there are many products out there. The deer are getting smarter and smarter. And it's getting harder to keep them out of everything. And I will tell you that this past February, I had deer eating on my junipers, which is like, I looked at that and just went, oh no. So good luck with that. I don't have any other answers for you, but those are some of the things I would try: exclusion and then repelling.
I actually had, until we eradicated it, we had a huge bed of ivy when we first got the house. And the deer would come in the rougher times of the winter. They would actually come in and graze on the ivy, which I didn't
Hmm.
think that would be very palatable to them, but they chomped their way right through it, and we're quite happy about it. Okay, we have another question. Could you tell us more about the conditions needed to grow white false indigo?
So they will take clay. White false indigo has a very deep taproot, and it's going to take about 2 to 3 years before you actually get that plant that you saw in my picture. And at the residence, they don't need a lot of nutrients, but they would like compost. So break that clay up with compost. And when you plant it, please give some space around it. Maybe put some more compost down to suppress weeds, but don't plant other plants right up close to it. The taproot needs some space to kind of get established. And I know sometimes people say, well, I'm just going to put a ground cover under here because I know it's going to get 3 feet wide on top, but it's narrow at the bottom. Just give it a chance that first year to have its own space. But it will grow in our clay soils in Franklin County. If you have sandier soils, it will possibly be happier.
Mhm.
Although the Cedar Barrens, those are clay soils too. Just the clay is a different composition than what mine is in Franklin County. So know your own soil. That's that soil profile and understanding pH and its silt, sand, and clay percentages together. Do you have a clay loam? Do you have the most beautiful loam, which is in the middle? Everyone's
Yeah.
nirvana of soil. And that will tell you what you need to do to it to make it hospitable for whichever plant you want, except the ones that are like the lakeside daisy. Don't do that one.
Don't do that one. But definitely get yourself up to the Marblehead Peninsula, or
And
there's
and
now
take a
Lakeside.
look. It's
Yeah, and there's now
beautiful.
Lakeside Daisies, not only at the Lakeside Daisy Preserve, but there are also Lakeside Daisies up on Kelly's Island as well. Robin just weighed in that not at the residence, but New Mexico has quadrant gardens representing areas of the state at the State House. So,
Do
and
they?
yeah, similar
Cool.
idea. Yeah.
I
Uh,
love it.
Loretta, yeah, Loretta asks, any ways to manage lesser celandine once it invades the garden? I suspect not, but I can't bear to dig up the whole garden. Maybe I just have to live with it. Any insights?
This is what I'm doing. I mistakenly planted it in the 90s because someone gave it to me and it was so cute. And that was before I knew what it did. So, and what's interesting is that it didn't do anything for 15 years. It stayed right there. It got bigger, but it didn't self-seed. I'm not sure what clicked, what happened. So now what I'm doing is a combination of cardboard. I am laying cardboard in the area, and yes, that area of the garden is done. I just laid cardboard in. And I also, anything that comes out between the cardboard, I have a suite of tools that are battery operated, and I have a weed whacker, weed eater, whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
string trimmer. And I go there. In fact, I'm going to do this tomorrow morning. And every time I do it about 3 times in a season, I whack down anything I see. Any green gets whacked down. And I got that tip from Larry Weiner, and he wrote the book. I'm looking over, shoot, my book, Garden Revolution, I think is him, Garden Revolution. And the way that he gets rid of weeds is to constantly starve them. So if you can take the tops off, they can't make chlorophyll and they can't feed those little bulbets or bulbils or whatever at the base of the plant, and eventually you starve it. I have a feeling it's going to take many years. And I did try glyphosate and it didn't even touch it.
Yeah.
And I
It's a
don't
really
use glyphosate because I hate it.
it's such an interesting your observation about planting it in the yard, and then for the longest time it's not an
Hmm.
issue. There it is, and now
Boom.
it's exploded, and it seems like it's exploded all over the state, and it's just
Hmm.
such a noxious and persistent but beautiful plant.
Yeah,
It
I
just
know.
threatens to take over. We had a couple. We had just to clarify. The website is Ohio Native Plants with an
I'm
S dot
sorry.
org.
That was my error. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll change that
Let's see.
on my slide.
Someone mentioned that Ohio Prairie Nursery has a wonderful eco mix with clovers and
Good.
some fescues for lawn replacement. And then someone else said, careful, some landscapers will give you non-native clover. Someone else, Sue, said you can also plant native violets. Um, Somebody else has said, Carol said, I'm currently taking the Advanced Master Gardener course on native plants. I have learned so much. This presentation was a wonderful addition to my learning. I'm so excited to spread the word and encourage others to put native plants into little pockets in our gardens. I love this quote.
Thank
Um,
you. Yeah,
Prunella vulgaris is self-heal.
thank you,
Um,
Robin, again.
And then Kim asks also, where can we find the petition to stop the data center that you mentioned?
If you go to Cedar Bog, you just put Cedar Bog um, Data Center, put that in there.
Mhm.
It will take you to the website that you can sign the petition, and it also tells you when you can show up at the meetings. It has a lot of information about data centers and about Cedar Bog. You can also go to the Cedar Bog website, and I believe there's a link on that website to the Cedar Bog Data Center website, I believe.
Carol McKinley said, Deb, you helped me plan and create a pollinator garden on an island in Indian Lake using native plants. We are now
Oh,
entering our fourth summer. That garden is thriving. Thank you for your help with the project. Nice.
thank you, Carol, for getting back in touch. Those things happen and then you lose track.
Robin added plants kid, which I'm not familiar with, attracted foxes to my garden in Maryland to cover the scent. The smell was bad, but it sure repelled the rabbits. By the way,
There we go.
if anybody ever finds urine, predator urine, as used as a way of getting rid of or trying to repel, I just strongly encourage you to examine where it comes from and the conditions under which the animals are housed, because we've had a case in northeastern Ohio that was just atrocious, and these animals were so abused to be able to collect their urine. So just I'll throw that out there.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I didn't know that, Harvey.
Loretta's got a great thing. Thank you for acknowledging the inevitability of failure.
Hmm.
I've never been successful at growing bleeding heart. And then
It
finally, I
happens.
think finally we have, what kind of plants can I plant? A heavily treed site in Kahana. It does have spring wildflowers. Thanks.
So basically, you're going to have your spring and your fall. In the summer, the leaves take away too much of the light, and you will have just that open area. But in the fall, there are lists of plants that will take shady sites, like our beautiful asters, the wood asters. There are two species, Symphyotrichum divaricata, which I think is the white wood aster, and then Symphyotrichum cordifolium, which is the blue wood aster. We have so many asters that go into, and we also have some woodland goldenrods. There's a goldenrod, the blue stem aster and the zigzag aster. Native ground cover aster. Yes. Thank you, Sue. I just noticed that. There are there are many plants. Of course, my mind is going blank at the moment. Spring wildflowers, definitely. Um, but then they are ephemerals by nature because they just don't get the light in the summer. So just enjoy your woods in the summer with not much, and then maybe put in some of those fall blooming plants that I mentioned. We do
And
have
also, if
both wood asters in the Heritage Garden. Sorry.
also point out anybody wants to, this program and other programs in the series are archived on our Nature in My Backyard YouTube channel. And we had Dave Tomaszewski of Meadow City Nursery, and he talked about soft landings. He talked about, creating those areas beneath our trees where you allow all the leaves to sit and to encourage a place for all of those invertebrates to have their soft landings. But he gave suggestions in that about a series of flowers. So you could have plants and colors through the year. Then let's see. Sue had said, I'm assuming we're going back to the celandine with this. Starving the roots does work, but it takes many times cutting it back. You need to allow it to form leaves. It is using stored energy in its roots to form leaves. Keep doing it, and it will eventually use up all its root stored energy.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that we've got all the questions answered. Again, Debra, what a fabulous program. What a great resource you are. And, thank you for your passion, and thank you for, being an evangelist for not just native plants, which of course is our bailiwick here, but the whole idea about gardening and why gardens are so incredibly important. And as you reminded, agriculture didn't come first. Horticulture came first.
Thank you. It
we
did.
See, I learned something, and I'm a raptor guy. So anyway, thank you so very, very much, and we hope to see you in the garden soon.
Okay. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you all for joining us.